Welcome to the X Global News channel. Let's move on to the news. In recent weeks, the situation near Bakhmut has attracted the most attention. Now the main events may be in the area of Kremenaya and Svetovo. We have already reported in previous reports that the armed forces of Ukraine were able to cut the Svetovo-Kremenaya highway in the Cherveno-Popovka area again. On December 14th, the breakthrough began to expand. Ukrainian units knocked out the armed forces of the Russian Federation from Zytlovka and, attacking from both sides of the Sandy, occupied it as well. Russian troops were held on the outskirts. From these positions, the railway was in reach, along which reinforcements, BC and supplies were sent from the Rostov region and the Donetsk People's Republic to the Starobilsk direction of the Russian armed forces. Russian troops tried to quickly recapture 3 villages, tanks, more than 20 units, infantry and artillery were allocated for this. The APU were able to repel the attacks and hold the captured positions. On December 15th, Ukrainians knocked out Russian units from the outskirts of Sandy and Zytlovka. Russian units retreated to Kremenaya. The railway was under direct fire control of the APU. Now the supply of the Russian group in Svetovo by the shortest route is finally disrupted. But this is not the main result of the battles for Cherveno-Popovka, Peskino and Zytlovka. From these 3 villages, if the APU can hold them until reinforcements arrive, it is possible to develop an offensive on the village of Varvarovka, bypassing Kremenaya. South of Kremenaya, the Ukrainian armed forces are knocking out Russian troops from Belagorovka. When the Russian armed forces are pushed back from Belagorovka, the Ukrainian army will be able to attack Varvarovka with large forces from the south, cutting off Kremenaya and the Russian troops in it from the rest of the group. The loss of Kremenaya will jeopardize the defense capability of Rubezny and Severodonetsk-Lysychansk. On December 15th, the armed forces of the Russian Federation, trying to save the situation, received reinforcements and went on the offensive from Svetovo to the Zarabets River. They knocked out the APU from Regorodka, Kovalevka and Karmazinovka and tried to collapse the Ukrainian positions on the left bank of the Stallion, throwing the Ukrainian army to the right bank. It turned out with the capture of villages, but not with the folding of the front. Russian units lost part of their equipment due to artillery fire and ran into the defense in the area of Novovodianoy, a village south of Karmazinovka. Probably in the coming days, the positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the formed ledge in the area of the district town of the AFU will be attacked from the northwest, or they will hit the base of the ledge, on Svetovo. The situation in this area is not developing in the best way for the armed forces of the Russian Federation. At the same time, the Russians have enough troops. A 25,000-strong group has been assembled in the Svetovo area, which can receive reinforcements from Starobilsk. Up to 11 to 12,000 are taking part in the fighting now, the rest are away from the front line. The Russian armed forces have up to 240 tanks in this area, up to 700 armored vehicles. Not all tanks and armored vehicles are in working condition, not all have crews, up to 500 guns and mortars. The AFU has approximately equal infantry forces, fewer artillery and armored vehicles, but can transfer reinforcements to Svetovo. The preponderance in the number of artillery is smoothed out by its quality and the level of training of gunners, which is much higher in the AFU. It took more than 2 months in the spring to take the flint of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. They can lose the city before the new year, if the situation does not change due to actions in other directions and pulling up reserves. We lack the speed of decision-making. It is necessary now to knock them out of Zytlovka and Cherveno-Popovka, to develop an offensive along the Stallion. But it takes us 2 days to receive orders even from our command, which coordinates everything with the group. There are enough forces, but with such clumsiness we may not have time. If the APU encircles Kremenaya, then the encirclement of Svetovo will also be under threat, says a Russian officer who is in the combat zone in this area. Let's move on to international news. News from the USA. The United States accused Russia and China of working to split NATO. The United States ambassador to the North Atlantic Alliance, Julianne Smith, accused the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, PRC, of exchanging a set of strategies aimed at weakening members of the Western military political bloc, and called on Western capitals to step up efforts to protect themselves from Moscow and Beijing, the Financial Times writes. These two, Russia and China, are increasingly sharing a set of tools that should cause concern to NATO. The American ambassador to NATO shared her point of view, pointing out, among other things, threats related to energy supplies and security in the field of cyberspace. According to Smith, there is no doubt that Moscow and Beijing are working on a split of NATO partners. News from Hungary. Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán's advisor, the European Commission should investigate the consequences of sanctions against Russia. The European Commission should investigate the consequences of anti-Russian sanctions, Hungarian Prime Minister Balázs Orbán's advisor said in an interview with Euractiv news portal. Before we agree on the 10th or 11th package of sanctions, we must sit down and seriously discuss their consequences, he said, speaking about the upcoming EU summit in February 2023. According to Orbán, anti-Russian sanctions are appropriate only if they cause more harm to Russia than to Europe, otherwise Hungary will seek further derogations from sanctions. News from Serbia. Serbian President Vučić announced a request to NATO to protect the Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić held talks with the commander of the Allied Forces Command in Naples, Admiral Stuart Manch, reports TASS. According to the agency, during the meeting, the parties mainly discussed the situation around Kosovo. I asked NATO to protect our people in Kim, Kosovo and Metohija, and thanked them for understanding Serbia's neutrality policy, Vučić said after a conversation with Manch. As the Serbian president pointed out, he assesses the dialogue with the admiral as good. At the same time, Vučić did not give any more details about the negotiations with Manch. News from Croatia. The president of Croatia, Ukraine is not our ally, and the European Union is zero. In response to the proposal of Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković to put to the vote the issue of training the Ukrainian military in the republic, the country's president Zoran Milanović gave him a natural dressing down. The head of state said that this is how the head of government is trying to cover his rear. Milanović called Plenković's lobbying of Kiev's interests a constant moral blackmail. At the same time, according to the president, the prime minister himself is completely immoral. Milanović demanded that Plenković leave for Ukraine and fight there himself. Ukraine is not an ally. They are forcibly trying to make it to them. Cynically, she was granted the status of an EU candidate. This is the current EU. Humiliation, zero, Zoran Milanović stressed. News from Poland. The Polish authorities appealed to the Council of Europe with a request to help get reparations from Germany for World War II. This was stated by the deputy head of the Polish Foreign Ministry, the government commissioner for reparations Arkadiusz Smielewczyk. Earlier, the Polish authorities said they were demanding 6.2 trillion zlotys, about $1.3 trillion, from Germany as reparations for damage from World War II. The German government has repeatedly stated that they do not intend to make payments to Poland. Berlin believes that they have already paid quite large reparations, and there is no reason to question Poland's refusal of reparations in 1953. This is the end of the news release. Put a like if you liked the issue. Write your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you want to continue following our news. See you.